with the latest episode of Ready to Love, specifically the first part of the reunion. In some ways, it does feel like a warm up, as most of them do, though there is also the chance that when it comes to certain people, we're just getting a taste of what's to come, and it's going to be as explosive and unfortunately ghetto as we've seen in past reunions. But before we get to all that, let's start on a happy note. When it comes to people who are dating or found somebody, Fabrice, the one who finds sex to be a big time priority in his relationships and seemingly in all interactions, he has somebody. Lyndon, despite him kind of wasting his time, he has a girlfriend, and he credits the show for getting him to open up more, so possible positive spin on the whole experience of the journey. And of course, as to be expected, Sue-Ann and Blake are perfectly in bliss. They live 10 minutes away from each other, and she's starting to leave stuff at his house, so while they're not necessarily walking down the aisle right now or going to see somebody about a marriage license, they're probably in the best place that we've seen somebody in quite a few reunion shows. Especially for someone, or rather a couple that met during the process and didn't really sway to anybody else. But of course, not everything can be simple and happy. Some people have more complicated situations going on. Blue, for example, in one way, he does have a happy ending in the fact that Kayla from last season and him are dating, but it seems that between Jonique and also Z, there's been some very red flags actions. There's been some things that he's done that raises red flags. For Jonique, her not getting that last chance thing, which we learned that Blue was the person who stopped her from getting it. It seemed that the reason why he decided not to give it to us because he wanted to not compete for her attention with the other men. So with her being eliminated, it seemed like he had some Tony type ideas going on. But as for how Z gets involved, before Kayla and Blue became official, Z and Blue were talking, and she gets a little caught off guard regarding Kayla coming out and, that being his main boo, squeeze, whatever. So while she and Jonique either don't really put him on blast, you can definitely tell there's some ill feelings there that if they wanted to really go all out, they probably could have. Those people aside, Corvea is on, and she and Mark Anthony hash it out about those spoiled thing, and they pretty much squash whatever issues they had or perceived issues they had. But with that said, Corvea's single, and Mark Anthony single after Mercedes. Why did I say a name like that? After Mercedes decided to put herself first rather than pursue a relationship. Which leads to the drama. Starting with Andre and Jeffrey. You can take what's happening between them in two different ways. In Andre's mind, it seems to be that he thinks that Jeffrey is keeping her kids from their fathers. But Jeffrey's mind is that if they wanted to be in their father's lives or their fathers wanted to be in their lives, they could do so. From what she says, there are no legal paperwork or whatsoever. There's no full custody or anything like that keeps these men from seeing their kids, yet they don't. But it seems in Andre's mind, she's doing something to keep them kids from their father, and between that and potentially some other things, they are no longer together. They're not even really on good speaking terms. As for Tony and Morgan, you saw how that ended. And unfortunately, it seems both are rather agitated, and they're ready to pretty much drag anybody into, how they say misery loves company? Both of these people really want people to be miserable with them. Tony, for example, as Andre and Jeffrey are having back and forth, he decides to insert himself when Jeffrey talks about all black men in some sort of manner. And of course, a hit dog hollers. So between Tony, nephew Tommy, and somebody else, they all have said they always want to put it out, not all men thing, but We're not going to go into that because that's a minefield. But getting to the actual Morgan and Tony thing, Morgan, Tony, you can see that their heads are clashing. Both recognize that being together will be a toxic thing, and unfortunately, with Marcia being on the other couch and Morgan not only want to co-sign, but just looking at her seems to get her mad, she tries to drag her into the situation. And thankfully, we won't, well, for this episode, Natasha and that whole thing gets fully explored, but it seems in the next episode that's going to be, and I can already tell you, if Morgan is out on the couch and not in the green room or whatever while that happens, it's going to be a hot and nasty mess, especially as Morgan calls Natasha names. Natasha tries to defend herself. Tony tries to get involved and try to squash the whole thing, but is not doing that well. But like I've said in past recaps and reviews of this, at this point, if people find love, that's a bonus, because the thing to watch this for is really the drama. The latest season of Ready to Love ends with the second part of the reunion episode, and while it does end with peace amongst the cast, there are still a bit of side eyes and a few fights that happen before they can have their little kumbaya moment. So to begin, after a certain point, it seemed that between Tony and Morgan, the producers were pushing them to try to cause some kind of drama, since they couldn't rely on the Jeffrey and Blake situation. Corvea wasn't trying to really push anything, and even with Blue revealing the Kayla thing, they didn't get what they needed. So, lucky for them, Morgan tried to get something going with Marcia by calling her a distraction and really trying to pick with her, but Marcia, like a lot of the rest of them, were like, "You're not embarrassing me on TV, you can stick to that with yourself." Tony, on the other hand, they was able to get him not to necessarily react, but at least be somebody who would get reactions out of other people. Whether it is Natasha revealing all that happened between them in terms of him ghosting her telling the producers what happened, potentially in revenge, and of course Marcia giving her comments, and Morgan, of course, painting the picture that he's a bad man, he's therapy, yada yada yada. All of that is given, and a few days separated from it is like not like the biggest drama we ever got from a reunion show, but considering it seems like they were trying to salvage this reunion show by having some kind of drama worth noting, especially since a lot of people were being coy, something's better than nothing. Because for the most part, they didn't really get that bombastic fight that they wanted, it seems. I mean, Tony definitely tried, Morgan tried, but it all fizzled out quickly. Just as much as with Jeffrey, you can tell that she was starting to get annoyed with Mark Anthony because he kept defending all the guys, but thanks to Mercedes quieting him down, since those two are still, well, they're not in a relationship, but they still got something going on. It's just not clear what exactly going on, but either way, she's able to have him shut the hell up so that he doesn't cause issues. As you can see, a lot of people are definitely in their feelings, but they're trying to maintain a composure. And while Tony and Morgan may be willing to go up on camera, everybody else is trying to keep it cute. And it seems Mercedes trying to make sure that Mark Anthony doesn't get any of the bullets that are flying about. But as said, most people are trying to keep it cute outside of Morgan and Tony. And this includes Cynthia and Anthony, who apparently aren't together anymore, which means none of the final three are together. But we don't get real details about why. And this is where the Mark Anthony thing comes in, since Jeffrey was thinking maybe Anthony did something, yet Cynthia's taking a hit for it because she makes it seem like she wasn't ready to love or emotionally available, but it's not clear the specific details of how she discovered this or what happened that caused her to figure this out. So all we know is that they're not together anymore, and once again we ended up with a season where the process didn't really produce any long-lasting relationships, or potentially long-lasting relationships. So first highlight to me is just that Kayla found love, and that's because she kind of got played in the last season, and I'm not saying she's my favorite out of all the seasons of Ready to Love. I would still put Sabrina up there. And when I say Sabrina, I'm talking about tall, black, and Asian Sabrina. But Kayla still had a place in my, I don't say place in my heart, that's taking it too far. But she was definitely someone who I wanted to see and I thought deserved better. And her getting it is... Actually, pause. We don't know how Blue is, so I'm not gonna say all that. Plus, I still feel like, why is this grown ass man calling himself Blue when that's not his legal name? It don't sit right with me. And I get maybe because you're gonna be on a public television show and you may do some things that are janky, you may not want it to be where people Google your name, you pop up. But I'm just gonna think of the positive. Kayla found love, even if it was a man who raises a few red flags, but the point is she found love, or believes she did. And I'm trying not to get shady, but it's very difficult. The next highlight for me is that a lot of people held back, and other people decided it's time to light some folks up. Jeffrey held back. Jonique held back. Z held back, and they didn't come out of character. Were they tempted? Did Tommy perhaps try to egg them on? Absolutely. But they didn't give in to the bait, and they may have made some faces, rolled some eyes, but they kept their decorum. On the other hand, Morgan did not. Morgan was ready, Tony was ready, and it was a sight to see. It gave us a good balance. For every mature conversation like we got between Corvea and Mark Anthony, we got aggressive, toxic, I want to say ghetto type of issues that we saw with Morgan and Tony. It's called balance, and it allows you to see black people are not a monolith. So the highlight when it came to this episode is just watching Morgan try to start something. And granted, she failed, just as the producers failed to really get a Blake versus Jeffrey thing going, featuring Sue-Ann, but, you know, after some point, you realize, and I think they realize, we're not going to get any real romantic, inspiring relationships out of these people, so let's try to get some drama going. And they got little sparks here and there, but they ultimately didn't get what they want. Now, with that said, you can't discount the side eyes that Jeffrey was doing or the faces she made. Never mind Z playing on her phone while making snide comments. That was a highlight. And even though it didn't necessarily come off as funny as we've seen in the past, at the very least, you can appreciate that the producers recognize that the backstage commentary or the commentary from the people who are not on the couch but in the seats behind them, that is what making sure the audio gain is up so that you can pick that up and give to the viewers at home. Which leads to the on the fence topic, which for us deals with Cynthia and Anthony being so coy. That was an issue for us mainly because when it comes to Cynthia and Anthony, they seem like a pedestal couple when it comes to the show, and Cynthia as an individual seemed like one of the best cast members that they put on the show. So for her to be this person who was so open to the process, who seemed to be doing so well in the process, even to the point of being able to kind of help and maybe for lack of better ways of putting their guide others, it almost made you think that in the future she could assist Tommy or even replace Tommy in terms of really helping people find love on this show. But one of the problems with putting people on the pedestal is when they fall off, it's so disappointing. And that's where I'm kind of at right now. I'm not just disappointed in the fact that they didn't make it, but I'm also disappointed in the fact that we don't know why they didn't make it. We're pushed to think that something happened between Cynthia and Anthony, but for the sake of their relationship in the long term, we're not privy to what it was. And being that this show is so much about setting an example of, you know, being an older black person in love, and yet we're not really treated to the complications of that beyond what happens in the process, it's a bit frustrating. And I'm not saying that I want to see a spin-off with these two and them exploring what the issue was, but I got to admit, increasingly it's just hard to have faith in this program, since if these two can't make it work, and it only takes a few weeks for them to kind of drop off and things not to go well, what should we expect going forward, whether we're in Dallas, Atlanta, the DC area, wherever? Overall, I feel like Ready to Love needs to leave the South and head north. I know that, again, New York may not be the best location, or Los Angeles, since they're overdone and probably too expensive for this production, but between Detroit, Chicago, Philly maybe, I just want them to prove that this could potentially work, and maybe it's just the South/Southeast that maybe isn't made for this program and what it's trying to do.